My name is Daniel, and for most of my adult life, I believed in the sanctity of marriage. I grew up in a household where loyalty was everything, where my parents weathered life's storms together, hand in hand. That's what I wanted for myself. I met Olivia during my second year of college. She was magnetic, the kind of person who could walk into a room and effortlessly draw people toward her. She had this energy, this rebellious streak that made everything feel exciting. I, on the other hand, was the complete opposite, cautious, calculated, always thinking 3 steps ahead. But somehow, she pulled me into her orbit, and I grounded her in return. We made sense together. For years, we built a life that felt solid. After college, we married and moved into a tiny apartment on the outskirts of Seattle. It barely fit us in our clutter of secondhand furniture, but we didn't care. Love filled the space in a way that square footage never could. We spent weekends tangled in bed, cooking breakfast together, making up stupid inside jokes that only we understood. On Sunday mornings, we had a ritual: pancakes, coffee, and dancing in our socks to old songs playing from a beat-up speaker. It felt like we had everything. But life doesn't freeze in time, no matter how much you want it to. As we got older, responsibilities piled up. Olivia climbed the ladder in marketing, working long hours, attending industry events, networking. I landed a stable job in finance, where my structured, methodical nature thrived. We made good money, upgraded to a sleek townhouse, and from the outside, we were the picture of success. But inside, something was shifting. At first, I ignored the signs. The late nights at the office. The text she'd quickly swipe away when I walked into the room. The sudden interest in hobbies she never mentioned before: book clubs, yoga classes, weekend brunches with friends I barely knew. When I asked her about them, she'd shrug, saying she just needed some space to be her own person. I understood that. Everyone needs their own identity outside of marriage. But something felt different. She started pulling away in small ways, leaving early, coming home later. The little rituals we once had, the things that made us, started fading. She stopped laughing at my corny jokes, stopped reaching for my hand when we walked side by side. Conversations turned into surface-level exchanges. How was your day? Anything new at work? Not really. Before she'd turn her attention back to her phone. I tried to fix it. I suggested date nights, weekend getaways, even just a quiet night in watching the old movies we used to love. But there was always an excuse: too busy, too tired, already had plans. I told myself it was just a rough patch. Every couple goes through them, right? Then came the night everything changed. We had just finished dinner. I was rinsing the dishes while Olivia dried them. It was one of the rare moments we were actually doing something together. I was about to make a joke about her terrible dish-drying technique when she suddenly dropped a plate. It shattered on the floor. She let out a sharp curse, staring at the broken pieces. But then she did something strange. She didn't move to clean it up. Instead, she just looked at me, her expression unreadable. "Daniel," she said, her voice quieter than usual. "We need to talk." Something in my stomach twisted. "Okay," I said slowly, shutting off the faucet. "What's on your mind?" She hesitated, gripping the counter like she needed to hold on to something solid. "I've been thinking a lot about us. About what we need." I frowned. "Okay, and what do you think we need?" She took a deep breath. "A change." A strange weight settled in my chest. "What kind of change?" "I don't know yet," she admitted. I feel like something is missing. Like we're stuck in this routine, going through the motions." I searched her face, trying to understand what she was really saying. "I get that," I said carefully. "I've noticed it too. That's why I've been suggesting we do more things together." She nodded, but it was a half-hearted nod. "I know, but I think it needs to be something bigger." The way she said it made my pulse quicken. "Like what? Moving to a new city? Changing jobs? A new hobby we can share?" She let out a small, frustrated sigh, rubbing her temples. "I don't know yet, but I'll tell you soon." That was the moment I knew, really knew, that something was deeply wrong. I spent the next few days trying to figure out what she meant. I kept replaying that conversation in my head, searching for hidden meaning in her words. Then, one evening, Olivia brought it up again. We were sitting at the dining table, just the two of us. She had cooked steak with roasted vegetables, one of my favorite meals. That should have been my first clue. She hardly ever cooked anymore. She poured us both glasses of red wine, then sat across from me. "I've been reading a lot lately," she began, her voice casual, but there was an edge to it. "About relationships, about different ways people make marriage work." I raised an eyebrow, taking a sip of my wine. "Yeah." She hesitated, then met my eyes. I came across something interesting. A strange tension settled between us. "What is it?" She took a deep breath, like she was about to dive into deep water. "I read about couples who explore open relationships." I nearly choked on my wine. I set the glass down carefully, my fingers tightening around the stem. "What?" "You know," she said, watching me closely, "seeing other people while staying together. It's a modern way of thinking. Some couples say it brings back passion, helps them rediscover what they need from each other." I felt my jaw clench. "And you think that's the solution for us?" She shrugged, swirling her wine. "I think it could be. I mean, I'm not saying you're not enough, Daniel. But we've changed. We've grown. And I feel like we're in a rut." I stared at her, my heart pounding. "So your solution is to sleep with other people?" She winced. "It's not just about that. It's about freedom, about exploring new experiences while still loving each other." I leaned back in my chair, shaking my head. "No, Olivia. That's not happening. I don't want to share my wife with anyone else. If we have problems, we fix them together, not by bringing other people into our marriage." Her expression tightened. "You're so rigid," she muttered. "Haven't you noticed how stale things have gotten? How boring?" I exhaled sharply, trying to keep my voice even. "I've noticed we're struggling, but I'm willing to work on it. We can go to therapy, take a trip, start something new together. But this isn't something I can do." For a moment, she just stared at me, and I saw something shift in her eyes. Resentment. Then, without another word, she pushed back her chair and stood. "Fine," she said coolly. "Let's just forget it." She turned and walked away, leaving me sitting at the table, staring at the half-finished meal. The wine in my glass tasted bitter now, and for the first time in our marriage, I felt something crack, something I wasn't sure could ever be put back together. The conversation about the open relationship never came up again, at least not in words. But it didn't have to, because from that night forward, something between Olivia and me shifted. She stopped trying to act like everything was normal. The small efforts she used to make, even the bare minimum, checking in on my day, sitting beside me on the couch, a passing touch, were gone. Our marriage became a shell, a performance we put on for the outside world. At first, I told myself this was temporary, that she was upset, that we would find a way to reconnect. But deep down, I knew better. One night, I stayed late at work, staring at spreadsheets without really seeing them. The office was nearly empty, just the hum of computers and the occasional sound of someone typing. I wasn't avoiding home. I was avoiding her. The silence, the distance, the feeling that my own wife was slipping away and there wasn't a damn thing I could do about it. I finally forced myself to leave around 9. The drive home felt longer than usual, my thoughts circling like vultures. Maybe I should have handled things differently. Maybe I should have asked more questions instead of shutting her down immediately. Maybe. I pulled into the driveway and noticed something strange. A car was parked a few houses down, a sleek, dark sedan I didn't recognize. It wasn't our neighbors. A weird feeling crept into my gut, but I shook it off. Inside, the house was quiet. The lights were dimmed. The air smelled faintly of Olivia's perfume. Familiar, but off, like it didn't belong to me anymore. "Olivia?" I called out, setting my briefcase down. No answer. I walked through the house, my pulse picking up as I checked the kitchen, the living room. Nothing. Then I saw the faint glow of light from the bedroom. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, dressed in a silky robe. Her hair was slightly damp, like she'd just gotten out of the shower. But it wasn't her appearance that made my stomach drop. It was the way she looked at me, calm, almost detached. "You're home late," she said, her voice unreadable. "Yeah, had a long day," I replied carefully, stepping further inside. "Where were you?" She tilted her head slightly, as if debating whether or not to answer. "I went out." Something in my chest tightened. With who? She sighed, standing up and tightening the belt around her waist. With a friend. You still have to hear. She wouldn't meet my eyes. What friend? She hesitated just long enough to confirm what I already knew. Olivia, I said, my voice lower now, controlled. Are you seeing someone else? Her lips parted slightly, and for the briefest moment, she looked sad, like she wanted to tell me something, but couldn't. Then, she straightened her shoulders. I told you I needed something different, she said quietly. A cold numbness spread through me. So that's a yes. She didn't answer, and that silence, that damn silence, was louder than any confession. I took a step back, exhaling sharply. How long? Does it matter? Asterisk how long, Olivia? Asterisk. She crossed her arms, looking away. A few months. My jaw clenched. Before or after you asked for an open relationship? She flinched, just slightly. But enough. I let out a bitter laugh, running a hand through my hair. So, that whole conversation, let's explore new things. That was just your way of easing into the fact that you were already cheating? Her eyes snapped to mine, and for the first time, there was emotion there. Anger, guilt, frustration. I was trying to be honest with you. I wanted to find a way for us to make this work. By fucking someone else? My voice was sharp now, cutting through the tension like a knife. She took a step toward me. I didn't plan for this to happen, but it did, and I didn't want to lie to you. I let out a humorless laugh. That's the thing, Olivia. You did lie. You lied every time you came home and pretended nothing was wrong. Every time you looked me in the eye and said you loved me while you were screwing someone else behind my back. She looked like she wanted to argue, to fight back, but she didn't. She just stood there, her hands clenched at her sides. I don't know what you want me to say, she finally whispered. I shook my head, my whole body tense. I want you to say it was a mistake, that it didn't mean anything, that you regret it. She swallowed hard, her expression unreadable. I don't know if I can say that. That was it. That was the moment I felt everything inside me break. I stared at her, at the woman I had spent years loving, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone else. And I realized she wasn't mine anymore. Maybe she never had been. A heavy silence settled between us, stretching into something unbearable. Finally, I exhaled, my voice steady. I think we're done here. Her breath caught slightly. Daniel. I held up a hand. No, you made your choice, and I'm making mine. I turned and walked out of the bedroom, out of the house, out of the life we had built together, and I didn't look back. I drove aimlessly for hours that night. The city blurred past me, neon signs and streetlights casting streaks of color across my windshield. My hands were tight on the steering wheel, my knuckles pale. My mind was a storm. Flashes of Olivia's face, her words, the way she hesitated before answering me. A few months. That meant it started long before she even asked about the open relationship. She had already chosen someone else, and I had been nothing more than an afterthought. Eventually, I pulled into a deserted parking lot near a 24-hour diner. The sign buzzed faintly, flickering every few seconds. I sat there, staring at nothing, my heart pounding. I could feel the weight of it settling into my chest, the realization that my marriage wasn't just in trouble. It was over. I checked my phone. Missed calls. 2 from Olivia. I ignored them. Instead, I called the one person I knew would answer, my best friend, Mark. He picked up after 2 rings. Done? I hadn't spoken to him about this yet. I kept everything bottled up, convinced I could fix it on my own. But now, there was nothing left to fix. She's been cheating, I said, my voice hollow. A pause. Then, where are you? Some diner parking lot on the west side. I'll be there in 10. I hung up and let my head fall back against the seat, closing my eyes. Mark showed up exactly 9 minutes later, pulling his truck into the spot next to mine. He climbed out, his expression grim. Mark and I had been friends since high school. He had been the best man at my wedding. He had always liked Olivia, but he had also warned me once, years ago, that she had a restless spirit. He knocked on my window. I rolled it down. Get out of the car, man. I exhaled, pushing the door open. The night air was cool, crisp. I hadn't realized how suffocating it felt sitting in there alone. We walked into the diner without a word. The place was nearly empty. A waitress with tired eyes handed us menus, but neither of us looked at them. Mark leaned forward. "Tell me everything." And I did. The open marriage conversation. The distance. The confirmation that she had already been seeing someone else. By the time I finished, Mark looked like he was ready to put his fist through a wall. "Jesus Christ," he muttered, rubbing a hand over his face. I knew something was off. I mean, you haven't been yourself for months, but I thought, I don't know, work stress, marriage stuff. I didn't think this. I let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, neither did I." He shook his head. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." I stared at my untouched coffee. "I just know I can't stay." "Damn right you can't." His voice was firm. "You can't stay with someone who disrespects you like that, Dan. She didn't just cheat. She tried to make you okay with it first, like she was easing her own guilt." I swallowed hard. I knew he was right, but it didn't make it hurt any less. "Look," Mark continued, "you need a plan. You can't just walk out and hope for the best. You need a place to stay, legal advice." I already moved some of my savings to my personal account. He raised an eyebrow. "Smart. What about the house?" "I don't care about it." "You should," he said. "It's an asset. If she wants it, make sure she buys you out." I hadn't even thought about that. I was too focused on getting the hell out of there. Mark sighed, leaning back. "You can crash at my place if you need to." "Thanks, but I think I need to figure this out on my own." He nodded, understanding. "Just promise me one thing." "What?" "Don't do anything stupid. I know how much you loved her, man, but she's not the same person anymore." I clenched my jaw. "Yeah, I know." I didn't go home that night. Instead, I checked into a cheap motel on the other side of the city. The room smelled like stale cigarettes and cheap air freshener. The bed creaked when I sat on it. But it didn't matter. I laid there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, Olivia's words looping in my mind. Asterisk, I don't know if I can say that. Asterisk, she didn't regret it. She didn't want to regret it. I thought about all the nights I had stayed up waiting for her, wondering if I was just paranoid. All the time she had looked at me like I was an obligation instead of the man she married. Somewhere along the way, I had become nothing more than background noise in her life. And that was when I realized this wasn't just about her. It was about me. I had spent so much time trying to hold on to something that was already gone. I had let myself believe that love was enough to fix what was broken. But love wasn't supposed to feel like this. It wasn't supposed to feel like begging. The next morning, I checked out of the motel and drove home. Olivia's car was in the driveway. I sat there for a moment, steadying myself. Then I walked inside. She was in the kitchen, a mug of coffee in her hands. When she saw me, her shoulders stiffened. "You didn't come home last night," she said quietly. I nodded. "No, I didn't." She set the mug down, wrapping her arms around herself. "Daniel, I don't." My voice was calm, tired. "I don't need an explanation." She swallowed hard. "What do you need?" I looked at her, at the woman who had been my whole world for so many years. And for the first time in months, I saw her clearly. "I need a divorce." Her breath hitched. I expected her to argue, to cry, to beg me to reconsider. But she didn't. She just closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them, they were wet, but she nodded. "Okay," she whispered. That was it. No grand fights. No dramatiche paredis. Just the quiet end of something that had already been dying for a long time. I turned away and headed upstairs. I needed to start packing. Because this time, I wasn't just leaving for the night. I was leaving for good. Packing my things didn't take as long as I thought it would. I had expected it to feel overwhelming, to struggle over what to take and what to leave behind. But in reality, it was simple. Clothes, personal documents, my laptop, a few books that mattered. Everything else, the wedding gifts, the furniture we picked out together, the framed pictures on the walls, felt meaningless now. Olivia hovered in the doorway as I moved through the bedroom, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her eyes were red, but she hadn't cried in front of me. "Where will you go?" she finally asked. I zipped up my duffel bag. "I don't know yet." She nodded like she expected that answer. Are you sure this is what you want?" I turned to her then, really looking at her. "This isn't about what I want, Olivia," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "You made that decision for me a long time ago." She flinched. A part of me hated the way that felt, hurting her, watching her struggle with the weight of what she had done. But another part of me, a deeper, angrier part, felt like she deserved it. She hadn't hesitated to hurt me. I grabbed my bag and brushed past her, heading downstairs. I could feel her following behind me, her presence heavy and suffocating. At the front door, I hesitated for just a second, my hand on the doorknob. This was the last moment. The last time I'd be walking out of our house. But it wasn't our house anymore. Without another word, I opened the door and stepped outside. I drove for a while, no destination in mind. I had told Mark I wanted to figure things out on my own, but after an hour of driving in silence, I realized that wasn't entirely true. I needed someone to ground me, so I turned the car around and headed to my parents' house. When I pulled into their driveway, my mom was already standing on the porch. She must have heard my car approaching. The moment I stepped out, she hurried down the steps, pulling me into a tight hug. I hadn't realized how much I needed that until it happened. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." I swallowed the lump in my throat and hugged her back. My dad appeared in the doorway, his expression unreadable. He wasn't the emotional type, but as I walked inside, he patted me on the shoulder. "Did you take everything you need?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, dropping my bag near the couch. I didn't want anything else from that house. He nodded approvingly. "Good." Mom gestured toward the kitchen. "Come sit." I made some coffee. I followed her, grateful for the warmth of home. Over the next couple of days, I stayed at my parents' place, trying to make sense of everything. Olivia had texted a few times, but I didn't respond. Then, 3 days later, I got a call from an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. "Hello?" A man cleared his throat. "Daniel? This is Eric Reynolds." I tensed. Eric was Olivia's boss, the one she had been spending all those late nights with, the one she had been cheating with. "What do you want?" I asked coldly. A pause. Then, "Look, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but Olivia doesn't know I'm calling." I said nothing, waiting. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. I let out a bitter laugh. "You never meant for it to happen? What? Did you accidentally sleep with my wife?" He sighed. "I know you're angry. You have every right to be. I don't know. I guess I wanted to take responsibility. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to hear it from me." I clenched my jaw. "Are you with her now?" "No," he admitted. "Not anymore." I froze. "What?" She ended it. "A couple of days ago. For some reason, that stung more than it should have." "Why?" Another sigh. "I don't think she actually wanted me. She just wanted something else. Something different. But once you left, she realized what she lost. She's a mess right now." I closed my eyes, inhaling sharply. "That's not my problem anymore." "I know." His voice was quiet. "I just thought you should know." I hung up. That night, Olivia called. I stared at her name on my screen for a long time before finally answering. "Daniel." Her voice was shaky. I stayed silent. She exhaled. I just wanted to hear your voice." A lump formed in my throat, but I didn't let it show. "Why?" "Because I miss you," she whispered. "I know I don't deserve to, but I do. And I know I hurt you, but I didn't realize how much I was losing until you were gone." I closed my eyes, pressing my fingers against my temple. "I don't know what to say to that, Olivia." She sniffled. "I don't expect you to say anything. I just needed you to know." For the briefest moment, I almost caved, almost told her I missed her too. But then I remembered the nights I spent alone, wondering where she was. The excuses, the distance, the way she had already let me go before I even realized it. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I said. "But I'm not it." Akiesobi. Then, "I'm so sorry." I swallowed hard. "Yeah, me too." And then I hung up. In the days that followed, I focused on moving forward. I hired a lawyer, started looking for a new apartment. Each day, it got a little easier. I still thought about her sometimes, about the way we used to be before everything fell apart. But I knew that person, the Olivia I had fallen in love with, was gone, and I was finally ready to let her go. The first few weeks after I cut Olivia off felt surreal. I had spent years building a life with her, and now I was trying to erase every trace of it. The divorce papers were filed. My lawyer assured me it would be straightforward. and I officially moved into a small but comfortable apartment on the other side of town. It was strange at first, waking up in a new place no longer tied to someone else's habits or routines. I didn't have to worry about late-night arguments or unread messages. I didn't have to second-guess whether I was the problem or whether I should have fought harder. I was free, but freedom came with silence. For the first time in years, I had to learn how to be alone again. Mark showed up one evening with a six-pack and a pizza. "Thought you could use some company," he said, dropping onto my couch. "Place looks decent. No furniture yet, but I respect the minimalism." I smirked. "I have furniture, just not much of it." He handed me a beer. "So, how are you really doing?" I exhaled. "Better. It still stings sometimes, but I don't regret leaving." He nodded. "Yeah, well, you deserve better than someone who didn't appreciate what she had." I hesitated before asking, "Have you heard anything from her?" Mark sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "She's not doing great. I ran into her at a cafe the other day. She looked rough, said she was trying to figure things out, but she didn't seem to be doing a good job of it." I wasn't sure how I felt about that. A part of me wanted her to suffer, to feel the weight of her choices. But another part, the part that still remembered the good times, just felt empty. "I guess she got what she wanted," I muttered. Mark took a sip of his beer. "No, man. She got what she thought she wanted. Big difference." I didn't reply, but his words stuck with me. Months passed. I focused on work, on rebuilding my life. Slowly, things started feeling normal again. Then one afternoon, I got an email from Olivia. I hesitated before opening it. Subject asterisk, I don't expect a response, but, "Daniel, I know I don't deserve to reach out, and I promise this will be the last time. I just wanted to say I'm sorry again. Not because I think it changes anything, but because I've had a lot of time to think, and I finally understand what I threw away. You were a good husband, a good man. I wish I had realized that before I broke everything. I hope you find happiness wherever that may be. Take care, Olivia." I stared at the email for a long time. Then, without overthinking, I deleted it. 1 year later, I found myself in a different city with a new job, new friends, and a new sense of peace. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I had learned to let go. One evening, while grabbing coffee at a small cafe, a woman asked if she could take the seat across from me. She had kind eyes and a warm smile. I smiled back. "Of course." And just like that, a new chapter began.